there's obviously a lot of like horrible in the world, plenty to go around. And one of the areas where I think, there was a ray of sunshine this week specifically is an infrastructure deal. Yeah. We supposedly have, and there's multiple versions of this floating around. But in this case, there is they need 10 votes or the 5 to go on board, and then somebody to just do it. They use it for reconciliation. Because here's the little secret. And I want to tell everybody this. With reconciliation, you only need 51 votes. You need 50 votes and the vice president. You need 60 to overcome a filibuster and that kind of stuff to move ahead. Well, if you've got 55, you can use, because it's a reconciliation related thing, you can just move ahead. So even though it's reconciliation, you can do it with 51 votes. If you end up with 56 votes, or 55 in this case, because you don't need the vice president, that's technically still a reconciliation-based vote. It's just a bipartisan reconciliation-based vote that bypasses the filibuster on things related to the budget. So we may, and then the question becomes, well, if we're just going to end up with a reconciliation bill anyways, why don't we just do the giant thing? Why don't we tack on some other stuff in the amendment process, get it up to about, $2 trillion and go ahead with it. And there may be legs in that argument, but the final, back and forth was, that Biden ultimately said, we're going to negotiate this. We're going to do a bipartisan infrastructure bill as best we can. They came to an agreement. It's $1.2 trillion. And obviously there's a lot of, the bill has to pass in that regard. If the $1.2 trillion doesn't pass, if the Republicans don't sign on to that, then the fallback agreement from Manchin and Sinema more than likely is vote for the bigger bill in reconciliation. Or at the very least that one. Like because Manchin and Sinema are on board with this. The other thing too is, remember, the outlying thing was, can we get Manchin and Sinema to get on board to override the filibuster? Which, by the way, we have a 50-50 split in the Senate. If we lose a seat, if a Democrat has a heart attack or retires or is scandaled out of office or anything in the next 4 years, in the next 2 years, depending, but that's most of the people who are in the mix aren't necessarily in danger of losing their seat. Then we don't have the filibuster anymore to stop the Republicans from stopping everything that goes forward and basically owning civil rights for the next decade. Because if we can't get if we can't get the other stuff through and it turns on us, we're done. So that aside, the idea is, though, in this $1.2 trillion package, Manchin and Sinema have agreed to this package. That was part of the negotiation with the Republicans. So this very well could have been just a big posture to win a $1.2 trillion effectively reconciliation package with all the Democrats and Kamala Harris voting, or one other Republican who was on board with it, who was at that meeting, the 55 votes to get this through. Which is, by the way, in the world of negotiation, if you have a giant metal bar and it's bent too far the other way and you want it to sit straight up in the ground, you can't just bend it straight up. You have to overbend it and then it will correct to the center, right? And so if you want $1.2 trillion in infrastructure, ask for 2.25. Right. Meet you halfway. Your halfway point is what you actually wanted the whole time. The president and a mixture of Democrats and Republicans came out to say they had a deal this week. It's an 8-year plan that includes funding for roads, bridges, the power grid, public transportation, and the internet. And I've said all along that rural broadband is the carrot and the stick. If you go, well, we don't have to do this, but we're not going to do that. If you guys are going, infrastructure is roads and bridges, you can't go, infrastructure is roads and bridges and broadband for our state. So we'll do this tiny little package, but that only benefits red states, because states have got their internet story together. They've got, especially the ones that have places like Wall Street, Cupertino, and the Chicago trade, organizations, they got a lock on that. They don't need any help necessarily. Connecting it to the rest of the area might be nice. I mean, I'm sure there's some Google executives who love their Montana farm to have fiber optic running from a station connected to the rest of the country. I'm sure they would love that. Thank you, Lulu Girl, for the super chat. But you don't get that unless we get the other stuff. And the other stuff, isn't roads and bridges, because you need that too. So the additional stuff, the padding of stuff, including Amtrak, but I think there's $60 billion for rail in there, which the Republicans were against, and public transportation, which the Republicans were against. That was put in there by leveraging broadband in the red states, because the Republicans can't go back. We're for an infrastructure bill as long as it's roads and bridges and highways. That's what we do. And then go, well, we want to cut out the roads and bridges and highways. We just want there is no leverage from them on that. You want that anyways. We'll give you broadband, but you have to give us this. Biden praised a group of 5 Republicans and 5 Democratic senators whom he met earlier and promised the package would generate millions of jobs, which is true. We're in a race with China and the rest of the world for the 21st century. This agreement signals to the world that we can function, deliver, and do significant things. What's in the bill? Less than half the money in the 8-year proposal is new spending. It includes $109 billion for roads, bridges, $66 billion for railways, $49 billion for public transport, and $25 billion for airports, according to a White House statement. A further $73 billion would be pumped into the power grid, and $65 billion for expanding Americans' access to broadband internet. The package is meant to be paid for with unused coronavirus aid money and return state jobless benefits. Democrats also argue the bill's proposed, by the way, now you understand Democrats fighting for a much larger package and all these kind of things. There's that money. You already allocated it. You were fine with it going out the door. Now, what are you going to change your mind on why? So most of this money is coming from that, and the rest is discretionary funds that have been around for a while. So the extra money is coming from that. The package is meant to be paid for with unused coronavirus aid money. The Democrats also argue the bill's proposed $40 billion investment into the Internal Revenue Service for beefed up enforcement would generate a net gain of $100 billion in extra tax revenue. The plan will reportedly neither raise taxes on middle-income Americans nor reverse the tax cuts to business taxes that were passed during the Trump presidency. Notice you don't have to reverse the personal tax cuts during the Trump presidency. Why is that? Because they weren't permanent, like the business ones. They expire. Republicans said strongly opposed Biden's calls to increase the corporate tax rate from 21% to 28%, while the president rejected a plan to hike taxes on petrol. I love we're saying petrol. That's fun. What would be, and then there's a separate bill they're going to work on, which is the climate-related stuff. The president wants to enact another roughly $6 trillion in spending package that would roll into his party's priorities on climate change. The $6 trillion is someone else's number. It does not include the $1.9 trillion already passed and this $1.2 trillion. So there's not that left to it. The whole thing was $6 trillion. And again, the American economy is around $21 to $22 trillion, between $21 and $27 trillion a year. So just in case you're wondering what kind of money is flowing through here, and you're getting sticker shock. The most powerful Democrat in the House, Speaker Nancy Pelosi, made clear they would not pass one bill without the other. This is the measure that especially tax rate increases the wealthy and corporations. This is a role in his party's priorities on climate change, education, paid leave, and child care benefits. It's being drafted by Senator Bernie Sanders, a self-described Democratic socialist. Right. The measure is expected to include tax increases on the wealthy and corporations. The most powerful Democrat said, made clear they would not pass one bill without the other. There ain't going to be a bipartisan bill without a reconciliation bill. Echo the sentiment later from the East Room of the White House. If this is the only thing that comes to me, I'm not signing it. It's in tandem. So they've got these. So they're going to do a reconciliation with the other stuff with the bipartisan bill. They're not passing a bipartisan bill unless the reconciliation bill is happening. That was the deal with them. So anyways, good news all around. Lots of stories. We got to go. It's the end of the show. Thanks for hanging out. You guys are wonderful. Thanks, Johnny Million. You're excellent.